The asteroid field glittered like broken glass against the black canvas of space. Captain stood on the bridge of the eternal horizon, watching his crew work with practiced efficiency. They had been mining these rocks for 3 months now, pulling rare metals from the ancient stones that drifted through this forgotten corner of the galaxy. "Another container full, Captain," called from her station. The young engineer wiped sweat from her forehead, her hands stained with grease from the mining equipment. "That makes 26 this week. We might actually hit our quota early." Allowed himself a small smile. His crew had worked hard and they deserved to go home soon. Earth was a long way from here, nearly 6 months of travel through the cold darkness between stars. But they were good people and they had families waiting. "Good work, everyone," he said. "How are the health readings?" The medic looked up from his screen. "All green, Captain. No injuries today, though complained about a headache this morning." "I'm fine," the pilot said quickly from her seat at the helm. "Just didn't sleep well. The gravity simulator was acting up again." Made a mental note to have checked the simulator. Life on a mining ship was hard enough without equipment failures. They were so far from home, so far from help. Out here, they had only each other. The alarm changed everything. It started as a low beep, then grew into a screaming wail that filled the bridge. Red lights flashed across every screen. Hands flew across her controls, her face going pale. "Captain, we have incoming ships. Multiple contacts moving fast." Stomach dropped. "How many?" "6, no 8. Captain, they're not human ships." The flickered to life, showing sleek vessels of dark metal cutting through space toward them. They moved with terrible grace, their hulls covered in strange symbols that seemed to glow with inner light. Had never seen ships like these before, but he had heard the stories. Every human who worked in deep space had heard the stories. "The Empire." "Battle stations," ordered, his voice steady despite the fear clawing at his chest. "Get our shields up. Prepare for evasive maneuvers." "Captain, we're a mining ship," said, her fingers shaking as she worked the controls. "We don't have weapons. Our shields are designed for asteroid collisions, not military-grade weapons." Knew this. He had always known this, but he had hoped they would never have to face it. The communications system crackled to life. A voice spoke, cold and sharp like breaking ice. "Human vessel, you have entered space claimed by the Empire. Your presence here is a violation of our territory. Power down your engines and prepare to be boarded." Grabbed the microphone. "This is Captain of the Eternal Horizon. We're just a mining crew. We didn't know this area was claimed. We'll leave immediately." Silence, then laughter cruel and mocking. "You humans are all the same," the voice said. "Weak, fragile, crawling through the galaxy like insects taking what doesn't belong to you. There is no leaving. There is only surrender or death." The first blast hit their starboard side. The ship shook violently, throwing against his chair. Sparks flew from the control panels. Somewhere below, metal screamed as it tore apart. "Shields down to 40%, shouted over the chaos. "Captain, we can't take many more hits like that." Another explosion rocked the ship. The lights flickered and died, replaced by the dim red glow of emergency systems. Could hear the hiss of escaping air, the groan of stressed metal, the sound of his ship dying around him. "Abandon ship," he ordered. "Everyone to the escape pods now." His crew moved without hesitation. They had trained for this, though none of them had believed it would actually happen. Grabbed the medical kit, snatched the portable data core, was already running toward the escape corridor. Stayed at his station, routing power to the escape systems. He watched on his screens as his crew scattered, racing through the dying ship toward safety. They kept firing, each blast tearing another piece of the eternal horizon apart. "Captain, come on," screamed from the corridor. "We have to go." He ran. The ship bucked beneath his feet, throwing him against the walls. Behind him, explosions bloomed like deadly flowers. Ahead, he could see his crew climbing into the escape pods. There were 4 pods, enough for everyone. A massive blast threw to the floor. The ceiling above him cracked, and he looked up in horror as a support beam began to fall. He rolled, felt the beam crash down inches from his head. When he looked up, the corridor was blocked. His crew was on the other side, safe. He was trapped. "Captain's voice came through his helmet radio. "Can you hear me?" "I'm here," he managed. "I'm cut off. You need to launch, get to the moon, find shelter." "We're not leaving you." "That's an order," pulled himself up, his body aching. "Launch the pods. I'll find another way, trust me." He could hear her crying, but she followed orders. She always followed orders. Staggered through the smoke-filled corridors, heading for the emergency airlock. If he could get to the maintenance pod, the small one-person ship they used for external repairs, he might make it. The ship was falling apart around him. Each step was harder than the last. His lungs burned from the smoke. His head pounded. But he kept moving because that was what humans did. They kept moving. He found the maintenance pod and threw himself inside, sealing the hatch just as another explosion ripped through the corridor. The pod's engines fired, carrying him away from the dying eternal horizon. Below him, he could see the moon, a gray and lifeless sphere. His crew's escape pods were heading for the dark side, where the sensors might not see them. Aimed for the same area, but another blast from the ships caught his pod. Systems failed. The controls went dead. He was falling now, tumbling through space toward the moon's surface, completely helpless. The last thing he heard before impact was the commander's voice on the open channel. "Let the human insects hide on that dead rock. We give them 48 hours to surrender. After that, we will hunt them down one by one. Let them learn what happens to lesser species who dare to enter our space." Then the pod hit the surface, and everything went black. When woke, he was lying in darkness, pain shooting through every part of his body. Something heavy was pressing down on his legs. He could barely breathe. His helmet radio crackled with static, and through it he could hear the message repeating. 48 hours to surrender. Captain of the destroyed Eternal Horizon lay broken and alone on a lifeless moon at the edge of known space. Any reasonable person would have given up. Any reasonable person would have accepted defeat. But was human. And humans, he had learned long ago, were not always reasonable. Pain woke, sharp, burning pain that started in his legs and spread through his entire body like fire. He tried to move and immediately regretted it. His left leg was pinned under a piece of the pod's hull. His ribs screamed with every breath. When he touched his helmet, his glove came away with dark stains. Blood. He lay still for a moment, listening to his own breathing inside the helmet. The pod had broken apart on impact, leaving him half buried in twisted metal. Above him, through a crack in the wreckage, he could see stars. Cold, distant, and uncaring. 48 hours, the head said. How much time had passed already? His suit's display was cracked but still working. 4 hours since the crash. He had been unconscious for 4 hours. Began to laugh, a sound that turned into a cough that made his ribs scream again. 44 hours left. 44 hours to free himself, find his crew, and somehow escape or fight back against an empire that had conquered 1,000 worlds. Impossible. He thought about his crew, brilliant and brave, kind and steady, quick-witted and skilled. They were hiding somewhere on this moon, probably terrified, maybe injured. They needed him. They needed their captain. And the thought he would just give up. "Not today," whispered, "not ever." He began to work. The first day was agony. Using a piece of broken metal as a lever, slowly, inch by painful inch, lifted the debris off his leg. When it finally came free, he had to bite down on his sleeve to keep from screaming. His leg was broken, the bone definitely fractured. He could see the swelling even through his suit. Using strips torn from the pod's interior padding and pieces of metal framework made a splint. It was crude, ugly and hurt terribly when he strapped it on. But it would have to do. He couldn't walk, but he could drag himself. And so he dragged himself out of the wreckage and looked around. The moon was dead. Gray dust stretched in every direction, broken only by rocks and craters. No atmosphere, no water, no life. Just endless gray under a black sky full of stars. In the distance, could see the wreckage of his ship, still burning silently in the airless void. His suit had a compass and a basic scanner. Somewhere on this moon his crew had landed. He just had to find them. The scanner showed faint energy readings to the north. It could be his crew's escape pods, or it could be hunter drones. Only one way to find out. Started crawling. By the second day, he had managed to fashion a crutch from a piece of the pod's support structure. He could stand now, though each step sent waves of pain through his broken leg. His ribs had gotten worse. He suspected internal bleeding, though there was nothing he could do about it. He had also discovered he wasn't alone on the moon. The first drone found him as he rested behind a boulder. It was a sleek thing, about the size of a large dog, floating on humming anti-gravity fields. A red sensor eye swept the landscape, searching, held his breath and didn't move. The drone passed within 10 feet of him. Its scanner swept over his position, waited for the alarm, for weapons to deploy, for his journey to end. But the drone moved on. Realized something important. The technology was advanced, but their AI was predictable. The drone had been programmed to look for certain things: heat signatures, movement, electronic signals. Suit systems were damaged, running on minimal power. His body heat was masked by the insulating wreckage around him, and he had been completely still. The drones had a weakness. They followed patterns, ran programs, operated within expected parameters. They didn't improvise, they didn't adapt. They weren't human. Began to hunt the hunters. He studied their patrol routes over the next day, learning their patterns. They moved in predictable sweeps, always the same timing, always the same paths. When one passed his hiding spot for the third time, was ready. He used a piece of reflective metal from the pod to redirect its scanner beam back at itself. The confused drone paused, trying to process the unexpected data. In that moment, grabbed it. The struggle was brief but desperate. His broken body was no match for the drone's strength, but he didn't need strength. He needed knowledge. He tore open its access panel and yanked out the central processing unit before the drone could sound an alarm. The machine died in his hands, took its power cell, its communication array, and its scanner system. Then he buried the remains in the dust. On the third day, found the ruins. They emerged from the gray dust like the bones of a giant beast. Ancient towers of black stone, worn smooth by eons of meteor impacts and solar wind. A city, or perhaps a research station, built by a civilization that had died before humans had even crawled out of Earth's oceans. Limped through the empty streets, his crutch tapping against stone floors. Most of the structures were collapsed, but one building near the center still stood. Its entrance was sealed by a door of strange metal that seemed to drink in light. He pressed his hand against it. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the door began to glow, symbols appearing on its surface in a flowing script that hurt to look at. The door slid open with a whisper. Inside, the ancient station still had power. Found himself in a chamber filled with devices he didn't recognize. Screens showed star maps of galaxies he had never seen. Control panels with symbols in languages long dead. And in the center, a holographic display that flickered to life as he approached. It showed this sector of space. It showed the Empire's territory, and it showed something else. Technical specifications, shield frequencies, weapon systems, communication protocols. This ancient civilization had studied the. They had been preparing to fight them, and they had discovered a weakness. The shields operated on a specific frequency range. If that frequency could be disrupted, even for a few moments, the shields would collapse. It would create a window, a chance to send a message through their jamming to call for help. His hands shook as he downloaded the data to the salvaged drone's memory. This was it. This was hope. A tiny, fragile hope, but hope nonetheless. His suit radio crackled. Anyone, this is, if anyone, hear this. His crew, they were alive. His heart leaped. It's I'm here. Static, then's voice choked with tears. Captain, Captain, you're alive, we thought. We saw your pod go down, we thought you were dead. Still here, said, and despite the pain, despite the exhaustion, he smiled. Still here, and I found something important. Where are you? Gave him coordinates. A cave system on the far side of a crater about 5 kilometers from his position. 5 kilometers. With a broken leg, cracked ribs, and who knows what internal damage. Looked at the distance and laughed again. That same half-mad laugh that had become familiar. I'm coming, he told his crew. Don't give up, I'm coming. He left the ancient station and began the long walk across the gray dust. Behind him, the ruins stood silent, keeping their secrets. Above him, ships circled like sharks, waiting for their prey to make a mistake. And broken and bleeding, dragged himself toward his crew. Because that was what captains did. That was what humans did. They kept going. The cave entrance was barely visible, just a dark crack in the crater wall that could have been shadow or stone. Almost missed it in his exhaustion. His leg had gone numb hours ago, which was either very good or very bad. He didn't have the energy to care which. He whispered into his radio, I'm here, I'm outside. A light flickered from deep within the crack. Then hands reached out, pulling him into darkness. Fell more than walked, his body finally giving up now that he had reached safety. He felt arms catch him, heard voices crying his name, and then everything went soft and quiet. When he woke, he was lying on a thermal blanket in a small cave. Emergency lights cast shadows on the rough stone walls. Knelt beside him, checking his vitals with a medical scanner. Welcome back, Captain, the medic said softly. You're a mess. Broken tibia, 3 cracked ribs, internal bruising, severe dehydration, and minor radiation poisoning. You shouldn't have been able to walk at all, let alone 5 kilometers. Didn't walk, croaked. His throat was dry as sand. Mostly dragged myself. Appeared with a water tube, helping him drink. Her eyes were red from crying. We thought you were dead. We saw your pod fall. The impact it looked bad. It was bad, agreed. He tried to sit up and gently pushed him back down. Rest, Captain, you've earned it. Can't rest, not yet. Looked around the cave. It was larger than he had thought, branching off into side chambers. The crew had set up a basic camp with supplies from the escape pods. How long have I been out? 6 hours, said, emerging from one of the side tunnels. Her face lit up when she saw him awake, then fell serious. Captain, the deadline is in 16 hours. We've been discussing our options. Saw the looks on their faces, the defeat in their eyes. They had given up hope. What options? He asked. Surrender or hide, said quietly. Those are the only options we have. We're miners, not soldiers. We have no weapons, no ship, no way to fight back. And if we hide, added, we'll eventually run out of air, water, and food. Our suits have maybe 3 more days of life support. Reached into his suit storage pocket and pulled out the data chip he had salvaged from the ancient station. We have another option. He told them everything. The ruins, the technology, the weakness in the shields. As he spoke, he watched hope kindle in their eyes, only to die again when he explained what would be required. We need to build a frequency disruptor, he said. It's possible with the technology from the ancient station and parts from our ship's wreckage. The device would create a brief window in their jamming field, long enough to send a distress signal to human space. The wreckage is swarming with, said. We'd never get close. Not all at once, replied, but in small raids, quick strikes to grab specific components, then retreat before they can respond. "That's suicide," said flatly. "Captain, look at yourself. You can barely stand, and the rest of us aren't exactly combat trained." "I know," said. He looked at each of them in turn. "I know what I'm asking, I know the risks, but I also know what happens if we surrender. They don't take prisoners, they take slaves, and I know what happens if we hide. We die slowly, alone on this dead moon." "At least hiding keeps us alive a little longer," said. Shook his head. "Surviving isn't the same as living. We came out here to build a better future for humanity, to prove we deserve our place among the stars. If we give up now, if we surrender or hide, we're telling the entire galaxy that humans break when things get hard." He pulled himself up, ignoring the pain, ignoring protests. Standing was agony, but he stood anyway. "I'm not ordering you to follow me," he said. "I'm asking, help me build this device. Help me show that humans don't give up. We've done impossible things before. We left our planet when everyone said it couldn't be done. We crossed the stars. We survived wars and plagues and disasters that should have destroyed us. We're still here because our ancestors refused to quit when things looked hopeless." Silence filled the cave. Could see them struggling, weighing fear against hope. Finally spoke. "What would we need to build this disruptor?" Felt relief wash over him. "The quantum core from the ship's main computer, the power coupling from the port engine, and the communications array." "That's 3 separate raids into territory," said. 3 chances to get caught." "Yes." She looked at the others, then back at. A small smile crossed her face. "Then we'd better start planning." They spent the next hours mapping out their first raid. The quantum core was closest, buried in the ship's command section. The patrols moved in predictable patterns, thanks to their reliance on drone AI. There would be a 7-minute window between sweeps. 7 minutes to reach the wreckage, extract the core, and get back to cover. 7 minutes that would determine whether they lived or died. Insisted on leading the raid himself. His crew protested, pointing out his injuries, but he was unmoved. "You need to see that it's possible," he said. "You need to see that we can do this." As night fell on the gray moon, they prepared. Checked his suit seals, tested his crutch, and tried not to think about what could go wrong. Would come with him. She knew the ship systems better than anyone. "Ready?" he asked her. "No," she said honestly, "but let's do it anyway." They crept from the cave, moving slowly through the gray dust. The eternal horizon's wreckage loomed ahead, a broken skeleton against the stars. Drones circled it like vultures, their sensors sweeping the area. Watched them counting the seconds between passes. The pattern held, exactly 7 minutes. "Now," he whispered. They ran, or rather, hobbled as fast as he could while matched his pace. The broken hull grew closer. 5 minutes left. They reached the shadow of a collapsed bulkhead. 4 minutes. Began cutting through a sealed hatch with her plasma torch. 3 minutes. The hatch fell away. They crawled through into the dark interior of the dead ship. 2 minutes. Hands flew over the exposed computer core, disconnecting cables and clamps. 1 minute. "Got it," she hissed. They ran for the exit. Behind them, heard the hum of approaching drones. 30 seconds. They dove behind the bulkhead just as 3 drones rounded the corner, their sensors sweeping the area they had just left. Held his breath. The drones paused. Had they left evidence? A footprint in the dust, a cut cable that shouldn't be cut. The drones moved on. Back in the cave, they collapsed, gasping and shaking, but held up the quantum core, its lights still blinking weakly. "1 down," she said, 2 to go. Over the next 2 days, they conducted 2 more raids. Each one was harder than the last. Each one pushed them to their limits. His leg got worse, the fracture spreading, but he refused to stop. They noticed the missing components. They increased patrols, set traps, but they didn't understand human determination. They didn't understand that, and his crew would rather die trying than live as slaves. Finally, they had all the pieces. Worked through the night, assembling the disruptor using the ancient alien schematics. When dawn broke, she held up a device that looked like it had been assembled from spare parts and hope. "Will it work?" asked. "Only one way to find out," said. Activated their communications system and prepared the distress signal. All they needed was a few seconds, one brief window through the jamming. "Do it," he said. Activated the disruptor. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the device began to pulse with light, growing brighter and brighter until it hurt to look at. The signal launched, a desperate cry for help racing through space at the speed of light. 3 systems away, human ships would receive it. Help would come. But it would take days. And the HAD noticed. The alarm started small, just a faint beeping on their scanner. Then it grew louder, more urgent. His face went white as she looked at the readings. "Captain, they're coming. Multiple contacts, ground forces and drones. They know where we are." Had expected this. The moment they sent the signal, they had painted a target on their location. They wouldn't let them escape now, but the signal was away. Help was coming. They just had to survive long enough for it to arrive. "How long until they reach us?" he asked. 10 minutes, maybe less." 10 minutes to run or 10 minutes to prepare. Looked at his crew, exhausted from building the disruptor, caring for his wounds with supplies running low, brave but terrified, and himself barely able to stand. Running wouldn't save them. They were faster, better equipped, and knew this moon better than they did. If they ran, they would be hunted down within hours. "We need to buy time," said. "The signal got through, but help is days away. We need to keep them from finding you long enough for rescue to arrive." "What do you mean, you?" asked, but her face showed she already knew. "I'll lead them away," said. "I'll give them a target they can't ignore. While they're chasing me, you 3 take the emergency supplies and find a new hiding spot. Somewhere deep, somewhere they won't think to look." "No," said immediately. "Captain, no, we're not leaving you." "That's an order," said gently. "Then I'm refusing the order," she shot back. Tears streamed down her face. "We've come too far, we've fought too hard. We're not splitting up now." Wanted to argue, wanted to pull rank, wanted to save his crew. But he saw the determination in their eyes. They had caught his disease, this stubborn refusal to give up. And he couldn't cure them of it because it was the very thing keeping them alive. "All right," he said. "Then we fight together. You and take the supplies and go deep into the cave system. Find somewhere defensible and hide. And I will set up a delaying action at the entrance, give you time to disappear." "Captain, your leg started." "Doesn't matter anymore," interrupted. "Nothing matters except buying time. Now go. That's an order I won't let you refuse." And gathered what they could carry and disappeared into the dark tunnels, and remained at the entrance, preparing their last stand. They had few weapons. Some plasma cutters normally used for mining, a couple of flares, a canister of compressed oxygen that could be rigged as an explosive. It wasn't much, but it would have to do. They arrived like a storm. Dozens of drones poured over the crater rim, their sensors painting the area with red light. Behind them came ground troops, tall figures in dark armor carrying weapons that hummed with barely contained energy. And leading them, a figure that makes blood run cold. The commander himself. He was massive, nearly 8 feet tall, his armor covered in symbols of rank and conquest. He moved with casual confidence, like a predator who had never known defeat. "Humans," his voice boomed across the gray landscape. "Your signal changes nothing. No help will arrive in time. Surrender now and I will make your deaths quick." Activated his external speaker. "We're miners, not soldiers, but we're also not slaves. If you want us, come and take us." Laughed, a sound like grinding stone. "Such spirit for such a weak species. Very well, I will enjoy breaking you." The attack began. Drones swarmed the cave entrance, triggered the oxygen canister, the explosion tearing 3 drones apart and sending others spinning away damaged. Fired her plasma cutter, the superheated beam slicing through drone armor like paper. But there were too many. For every drone they destroyed, 2 more took its place. Slowly, inevitably, they were pushed back into the cave. "Go," shouted two. "Get deep, find the others." "Not without you." A drone blast caught in the shoulder, spinning him around. Pain exploded through his body. He fell, his crutch clattering away. Grabbed him, tried to pull him up, but he pushed her away. "I can't run anymore," he said, gasping. "But you can. Find and keep them safe. That's my final order, engineer." Tears streamed down his face, but she nodded. She pressed something into his hand, one of the plasma cutters, and then she was gone, running deeper into the caves. Pulled himself up, using the cave wall for support. Drones filled the entrance, and behind them came, ducking his massive frame to enter. "The others ran," the commander said. "My forces will find them, but you brave little human, you I will deal with personally." "Good," said, raising the plasma cutter. "I was hoping for a chance to talk." Moved faster than something his size should move. He swatted the plasma cutter from his hand and grabbed him by the throat, lifting him off the ground. "Talk," the commander asked. "What could you possibly say that would interest me?" Struggled to breathe, his vision darkening, but he managed to gasp out words. "You don't understand us. You think strength is about size, about weapons, about never feeling fear or pain, but that's not human strength." "Then what is?" asked, curious despite himself. "Human strength is feeling all of it, the fear and the pain and the hopelessness, and choosing to go on anyway." His hand moved to his belt, fingers finding the detonator he had hidden there. "It's knowing you're going to lose and fighting anyway. It's being broken and refusing to stay broken." Saw the detonator a second too late. Had spent the last day rigging the cave entrance with every explosive device they had. Not enough to kill the commander through his armor, but enough to collapse the entrance, sealing the tunnel system. "For humanity," whispered and pressed the button. The explosion was enormous. Rock and fire filled the world. Felt himself thrown backwards, felt his grip release. Then he was falling through darkness, debris raining down around him. He hit the ground hard. Above him he heard the rumble of falling rock. The entrance was collapsing, tons of stone creating a barrier between thee and his crew. It would take them days to dig through. Days his crew could use to hide deeper, to wait for rescue. Through the pain and the darkness, smiled. He had bought them time. Emerged from the debris, his armor cracked but intact. He looked at with something that might have been respect. "You are dying," the commander said. "Your injuries are too severe. You have minutes, perhaps." "I know," said. Blood filled his mouth when he spoke. "But my crew will live. The signal got through. Help is coming and you lose." "I lose nothing. I will dig through this rock and find them." "Maybe, but by then human ships will be here. You'll have to explain to your empire how a broken human mining captain outsmarted your technology and cost you days." Coughed, the world growing dim. "How's that going to look on your record, Commander?" For a long moment, said nothing. He simply stared at this small, broken human who refused to accept defeat. "What are you?" he finally asked. "Human," whispered. "Just human. We don't give up, not while we breathe, not ever." His eyes closed. He thought of Earth, green and blue and beautiful. He thought of his crew, safe in the darkness, waiting for rescue. He thought of all the humans who had come before him, who had faced impossible odds and won simply by refusing to quit. Captain of the Eternal Horizon took his last breath knowing he had saved his crew, knowing he had proved that humanity deserved its place among the stars. Above him stood silent, looking at the collapsed tunnel, then back at the body at his feet. For the first time in his long career of conquest, the commander felt something unfamiliar. Doubt. The rescue fleet arrived 3 days later, warships cutting through space like silver arrows. Admiral Park stood on the bridge of the flagship, watching the gray moon grow larger on the. His jaw was tight with anger and worry. "Status of the forces," he demanded. "They're withdrawing, Admiral," his tactical officer reported. "8 ships pulling back to the edge of the system. They're not engaging." "Smart of them," the Admiral muttered. He had brought enough firepower to glass this entire moon if necessary. They knew they were outmatched. "Sir, we're receiving a signal from the surface. It's weak, but it's human." "Put it through." The speakers crackled, then a young woman's voice filled the bridge. "This is Engineer Lee of the mining vessel Eternal Horizon. We're alive. 3 survivors. We're in a cave system on the dark side. Please hurry. We're running out of air." "We're coming," the Admiral said. "Hold on." The rescue shuttles found them 6 hours later, 3 humans huddled together in the darkness, their air supply showing red zeros. And were barely conscious but alive. As medics rushed them aboard, grabbed the rescue commander's arm. "The captain," she whispered. "You have to find Captain. He saved us. He held them off so we could hide. You have to find him." They found his body near the collapsed cave entrance, surrounded by destroyed drones and scorch marks from the explosion. Had covered him with a piece of his own cloak, a gesture of respect that shocked the human soldiers. Admiral Park looked down at the fallen captain, at the makeshift splint on his leg, the blood on his suit, the determined set of his features even in death. "He must have been in agony," one of the soldiers whispered. "With these injuries, every step would have been torture. How did he even move?" "Because he was human," the Admiral said quietly, "and humans don't quit." The survivors were taken to the medical bay, refused treatment until she could tell their story. She sat in a hospital bed, words pouring out between tears, telling everyone who would listen about its impossible journey, the crash that should have killed him, the 5 kilometers he crossed with a broken leg, the ancient ruins, the raids on the wreckage, the final stand. "He never gave up," she said. "Not once. We wanted to surrender, to hide, to give in, but he kept going. He showed us what humans are capable of when we refuse to break." The story spread like wildfire through the fleet, then to other ships, then across human space. Within days, everyone knew about Captain, the man who wouldn't give up. But the story didn't end with humanity. 2 weeks later, during a prisoner exchange negotiation at a neutral station, the surprised everyone by requesting a private meeting with Admiral Park. Himself attended, his armor still showing scars from the cave explosion. "We wish to return something," the commander said, and his soldiers brought forward a sealed container. Inside was his body, preserved with technology, prepared for a full military funeral. "Why?" the Admiral asked. "Why show this respect to an enemy?" Was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried something the Admiral had never heard from him before: humility. "We have conquered 1,000 worlds," the commander said. "We have defeated species far stronger than yours physically. Species with better technology, larger fleets, more soldiers. We thought we understood strength. We thought we knew what it meant to be a warrior." He looked at the container holding his body. "But we never met anyone like him. Your captain had every reason to surrender. His ship was destroyed. His body was broken. He was alone, outnumbered. Any rational being would have accepted defeat. But he didn't. He kept fighting when fighting was impossible. He kept moving when movement should have been impossible. He protected his crew when protection should have been impossible." Met the Admiral's eyes. "He taught me something. Strength is not the absence of weakness. It is not about never feeling pain or fear. True strength is continuing despite the pain, despite the fear, despite the weakness. This is something my people have forgotten in our centuries of easy conquest." The commander placed his hand on the container. "We return him to you so his people will remember what they are capable of. So they will remember that giving up is a choice, and choosing to continue is a power no weapon can match." The funeral was held on Earth, at the military cemetery overlooking the ocean. Thousands attended, and stood at the front, wearing their mining company uniforms, medals of valor shining on their chests. Was asked to speak. She stood at the podium, looking out at the sea of faces, and felt presence like a hand on her shoulder. Once told me that humanity's greatest trait isn't our intelligence or our technology, she began. It's that we simply refuse to give up, even when we should, even when it seems impossible, especially then. Her voice grew stronger. He proved it. With a broken leg, broken ribs, internal injuries that should have killed him, he crossed 5 kilometers of hostile terrain. He outsmarted technology more advanced than ours. He led raids against an enemy that has conquered thousands of worlds. And when he could no longer run, he stood and fought. Not because he thought he would win, but because he refused to let us lose. She looked at the flag-draped coffin, showed the galaxy what one human can do with nothing but determination and hope. He showed them that we don't quit, not while we breathe, not ever. And because he wouldn't give up, 3 of us came home. Because he wouldn't give up, the learn to respect humanity. Because he wouldn't give up, every human in the galaxy now knows that impossible is just another problem to solve. The story of Captain became legend. It was taught in military academies across human space. It was told to children to inspire them. It was whispered in alien councils as a warning. Humanity, they learned, was not to be underestimated. The moon where fell was designated a memorial site. They built a monument there, a simple stone pillar that stood against the gray dust and black sky. On it, they carved his name and a message in every known language of the galaxy. Here stood Captain Human. When given every reason to surrender, he chose to endure. When offered mercy for submission, he chose to resist. When death was certain, he chose to ensure others would live. This is the measure of humanity. And below, the words he had lived by, the words that became humanity's motto among the stars. We don't give up, not ever, not while we still breathe. Years passed. The Empire, shaken by their encounter with human determination, became less aggressive in their expansion. Other species, hearing the story, began to see humans not as weak newcomers, but as beings with a unique and terrifying strength of will. Became a ship designer, creating vessels with escape systems that could protect crews the way she wished the eternal horizon had protected hers. Joined the diplomatic corps, using medicine as a bridge between species. Trained the next generation of pilots, teaching them that skill was important but spirit was essential. And on the anniversary of his death, they would return to that gray moon. They would stand before the monument and tell new stories of humans who refused to give up. Stories of miners who survived impossible accidents, of explorers who pushed past every limit, of ordinary people who did extraordinary things simply by refusing to quit. Because had taught them, and through them he taught all of humanity, that the greatest weapon in the universe wasn't a gun or a bomb or a ship. It was the simple, stubborn, beautiful human refusal to accept defeat. On the monument, someone had added an unofficial line at the bottom, carved roughly as if by a single soldier's knife. It wasn't in any official language. It was in simple, basic English that anyone could understand. They tried to break him, they couldn't. They tried to break us, they won't. We are human, we don't give up. And in the darkness of space, on ships and stations and colonies scattered across the stars, humans looked at these words and knew them to be true, had shown them the way. He had proved what they were capable of. He had proved that sometimes, the most powerful thing in the universe is simply refusing to give up. Even when every star in the sky says you should. Especially then,